Alex the Rat here again, and today I want to talk about something that I've been fascinated by pretty much ever since I got into PC gaming, and that is tracker tunes. If you paid attention recently, you might remember that I sent a floppy disk to DOSGamer for his birthday. On it was a tune I'd composed in memory of his father, who sadly passed away a while back. And if you're not familiar with what a tracker tune is, you probably got some questions right off the bat, like, how did I get a full song onto a 1.44 megabyte floppy disk? And you might also be curious about, well, how does this relate to PC gaming? Well, if you played games like Epic Pinball, or probably more famously just Jackrabbit on PC, or even later games like Deus Ex and Unreal Tournament, you may have noticed something unusual about the music in those games. Like, the music sounds really high quality and almost like it's been recorded, except it isn't. If you, for instance, play Jackrabbit 2 without a CD in the drive, you still get the music. And the game still takes up a very small amount of space on the hard drive. So what gives? What is this black magic? Well, to explain, we kinda need to dig a little deeper and talk about something called MIDI. You might have come across the term MIDI in the 90s if you were into PC gaming. MIDI files were often distributed because they were absolutely tiny, and yet they produced music. A lot of games used MIDI, most notably games like Doom and Duke Nukem 3D. But you may have noticed that MIDI can sound very different depending on what system you play it on. To bring up a fairly recent example, the Doom soundtrack. Here's a track from E1&1 played on a rolling sound canvas. And here it is played on my own Sound Blaster 32 card. Yeah, that's not exactly hard to hear. It sounds considerably different, maybe even worse on my card. And to bring up an even more clear example, here's the Duke Nukem theme played on a rolling sound canvas. And here it is played using ad-lib. Yeah, that's even more of a difference. So you're probably thinking, how is the same music sounding so different based on what system you have? And the answer is very simple. MIDI files are just data. Like, there's no actual sound in the file, it's more so just raw instructions on how to play the music. So the music you hear isn't recorded, it's being played live by whatever device that data is sent to. And so you can imagine that presents a bit of a problem for game music. The tune you spend time composing on your device is not gonna sound at all how you intended it, because the person playing it doesn't have the same MIDI box as you do. And that's not even getting the nuance of stuff like different MIDI standards. The basic gist of it is, MIDI is problematic. A solution could be to just use recorded music. That way it's gonna sound the same on every system you play it on. And when the Sony PlayStation came along and CD-ROM drives became a thing on PC, that certainly was an option. Because audio files were still really big. Like, keep in mind that MP3s wasn't really a thing until the late 90s, and especially in game development we didn't really have any decent audio compression standard until the 2000s. So if you want to record audio in your game for like most of the 90s, you'd rely on good old CD audio. That's right. The game CD would contain like actual audio, just like any other music you bought on CD back in the day. And yeah, if you don't know what a CD is, then here's one. So anyway, the problem with this solution is pretty obvious. What if you don't have the CD in the drive? Nowadays we have ways around this. A lot of old games that relied on CD audio for music now come with the music already included digitally, so you don't need a CD to hear it. But back in the day, if you didn't have the CD, the game would just not have music. Like, listen to Quake without the soundtrack. Like, it still works, there's some ambience in there, but you still lose a lot of the intended atmosphere, and that's just objectively worse in my opinion. And this, my friends, is where tracker tunes are so ingenious. Because what if we could have something like a MIDI file, but instead of relying on a device to play the sounds, we play them ourselves? And this is where tracker tunes come in. As the name implies, they are tunes made using what we call a tracker. It's a piece of software where you put down music in what we call tracks, hence the name. And instead of just sending the data to some device and hoping it will sound good, we can make each sound ourselves. Now, I hear you saying, isn't this just how Super Nintendo music was made? And yes, you'd be absolutely correct. In fact, the tech is pretty much identical. The groundbreaking thing about the SNES was actually its ability to straight up play sampled audio instead of generating it like they did on the NES and the Game Boy. Of course, you still have to make all the audio yourself, so it was more labor intensive. Today I want to just give an introduction to the wonderful world of tracking music, to show what we can do with it, and also give a bit of insight into how the music for games like Just Jackrabbit and Unreal Tournament was made. Okay, so you can get samples from like anything really, but most people would typically use something like a hardware synthesizer or something. So I've got my Volca FM here, which is a tiny digital synthesizer, but it has a lot of really cool like FM type sounds, which are basically like 80s synth type sounds. So yeah, if you listen to this, it sounds pretty 80s. So I'm thinking we can sample something from this. We just need to find a good sample to use. So yeah, let's browse through them and see what we can find. Yeah, I think that one's really good. That's like a good FM type like bass sound. We can change some algorithm stuff here. Yeah, like the basic sample there is pretty good. So you don't really need much to record samples in Windows 98. Yeah, you got the basic sound recorder here, and that's pretty good enough for our purpose here. So we're just gonna hit record. So let it finish. So we get the whole thing. Yeah, there we go. And that's our sample. So we'll go to save. We just call it the Volca FM base 1. So save that, and that's our sample. So yeah, this was just an example of how you can make your own samples for use in your tracker tunes. Okay, so if you remember Bart's video, he used a program called ProTracker. And ProTracker is one of the more popular trackers, but there are a lot of them. Like there's one called Scream Tracker, there's ProTracker, like there's a bunch of trackers. Yes, ProTracker is probably the most popular one, so that's the one I would go for. But MilkyTracker is a clone of ProTracker that runs on any modern PC. Like it is made to be a straight up modern ProTracker clone, and you can run this on everything from Windows 11 to Linux and Mac, so it's pretty easy to run. I've got it running here on Windows 98 because I want to keep things retro for this video. Like the moment you open it up, you'll probably be very confused. Like there's nothing here, nothing to work with. So what we obviously need to do is have, you know, something to work with. So we have two windows up here. We have instruments and samples. The difference is that each instrument can have multiple samples. Usually I just keep one sample per instrument just to keep it simple. But yeah, you can write anything you want here. So usually people will write like messages and, you know, the title of the song here. And anything they want really. On instrument 1, I will usually load like a kick sound, because I will usually start with, you know, drum sounds and just to have something basic. So I have a little sample floppy here that I will use. These are all of my own samples that I've sort of collected. You can find samples online very easily. You can even open like existing tracker tunes and extract the samples from them if you want to. Obviously, I think it's much cooler to just use my own, so that's what I'll do. Yeah, if we go into our floppy disk here, you see I have two folders. I have drums and synths. Go to drums. I think I have some kick sounds here. Room kick, Brit kick. I think Brit kick is the really good one, so I'll choose that one. So now if we open sample edit, you'll see we have a waveform here. So if I click wave, we can hear it. So yeah, that's straight up just a kick, like a bass drum. We can change the loop here. We obviously don't want a kick to loop, so we'll just keep it on no loop. So yeah, I think it's pretty much good as it is, but we could of course increase the volume here if we wanted to. It's pretty versatile in how much you can do. What else do we need? We could probably use some hi-hats. So we'll get an open hi-hat, we'll get like a closed hi-hat, maybe a crash, Of course, we're gonna need a snare drum. The 90 snare drum and splat snare drum. Usually I will use the splat one, so that's the one I go with. And yeah, why not? Let's just load up that sample we recorded, Volca FM bass 1. So if you open in sample edit, you see we have like a lot of silence before the sample actually starts. So what we can do to isolate the sample and like erase empty data is just do that, mark what we want to keep, and click crop. That will remove any kind of data we don't want in there. So if there's just a bunch of silence, we can remove that. So if you now play it back, that is the Volca FM in here, and we can play it any way we want. So yeah, it's pretty cool. And we can like take a portion of this and loop it if we want to have like a looping version of this sound. Obviously this is a pretty long sample, so we could edit it down if we wanted to. But yeah, we'll start with maybe the kick, and we can go in here, move around with the arrow keys, and using the F1 keys up here, we can choose which octave to have it on. So usually I will choose octave F4, because that's usually like the default octave. So we set it to record modes, pressing space. We can lay down some patterns here. So if you want like a simple kick beat, we can do that. Every 4 ticks here we have a kick. So if we play that back, we got like a basic rhythm going on here. That's basically it. That's what you do. You just lay down different notes essentially, and it will play it back, and that's tracking in a nutshell. So I'll say that's a bit basic. We want more than that maybe, so we'll maybe add the hi-hat, you know, every other beat. That's a bit more, you know. That's just not the kick. Okay, so maybe we want, you know, the snare drum as well. So we have a little bit of drum action. So obviously we already have a kick and a hi-hat in here, but you may notice we have several tracks here. We have 8 of them. And what's cool is that all of these 8 tracks can play simultaneously. So any sounds we put in here will play at the same time as this. So if you want the snare drum playing at the same time as the bass drum, we can just place it like this. Oh yeah. So yeah, it's pretty simple. And just to add that bass synth we recorded, we can maybe have a couple notes here. That doesn't sound quite right, does it? So we'll open that in sample editor, and yeah, we have a little bit of like silence before the sample actually starts. We'll just do what we did earlier, mark what we want to keep, click crop, and if we play it back now, much better. Although you may notice that as we play it, like the synth bass kind of hangs a bit, like it sustains. You may want to snap your bass sound. So what we can do is stop the note from hanging. And we can do that by adding a stop note. Stop notes are really good for avoiding like hanging notes, like sustaining notes. So it's a really good thing to have. Now you may notice we can't put a stop note here because it just ends there. So what we can do instead is put a stop note at the beginning. So that way, when we loop over from here, the note will still stop when the loop starts over again. So like this is just a loop, like when we play it like this. Like it will loop. And the cool thing is, we can make another one. So we can maybe like mark all and copy, and then we can make a variation on that loop in here. So if we paste, we have the same loop, and we can do whatever we want with this, and it will be different from the previous one. So maybe here we want to like add a crash at the beginning, or maybe we want to do that in the first one. Anyway, that's the basic gist of it. Like that's how you make tracker tunes. So all you need is samples, and you need a tracker. I obviously recommend MilkyTracker. I will leave a link in the description to where you can get MilkyTracker. It's free and it runs on Linux, Windows, Mac, whatever you want really. And yeah, there are older versions like this that run on Windows 98 even. So yeah, you can run it on anything you like. So yeah, that's about it. Thank you so much for watching my video, and a huge thanks to my wonderful Rat Army for the support. If you want to join the Rat Army, you can find us at discord.alextherat.com, and you can also find me on Blue Sky, bisky.alextherat.com, and I will see you next time. Bye for now.